Princess Arinia of the Valorian Empire stood at the edge of the grand hall, her silver gown flowing like liquid moonlight against the polished crystal floor. The ceiling of the Galactic Council chamber stretched high above her, a dome of shifting stars that mirrored the infinite galaxy outside. Beings of countless shapes and sizes filled the space, scaled reptilians, luminous beings of plasma, towering insectoids, and proud avian nobles with wings folded tight. Every race was present, every leader was watching, and yet no one looked at her with respect. The night was meant to be her choosing ceremony, a tradition where suitors from across the galaxy would step forward, pledge themselves, and offer alliances to strengthen the Valorian bloodline. For centuries, such ceremonies had been grand and glorious, shaping politics and deciding wars. But tonight was different. No one chose her. Her heart pounded as the herald's voice echoed through the chamber, announcing each suitor as they approached. One by one they came, cloaked in power and arrogance. One by one, they turned away. The Dravok warlord sneered openly. "Too soft," he growled before leaving. The Netheri ambassador shook his head. "Too gentle. She will not last." The avian prince of the Shirellans spread his wings with disdain. "She would rather speak of peace than conquest. Such weakness is unfit for my house." The words cut deeper than blades. Arinia's hands trembled against her gown, but she kept her chin high. She had trained her whole life for this, studied galactic law, learned the languages of 12 species, mastered diplomacy and strategy. But none of that mattered. They saw her compassion as weakness. They wanted cruelty, dominance, ambition that burned like fire. She had all the brilliance, yet none of the malice. And so, in their eyes, she was useless. At the far end of the chamber, her father, Emperor Kalor, watched in silence. His face was a mask of stone, but Arinia knew the disappointment in his heart. He had hoped that tonight would bind their empire with new strength. Instead, it had become a display of humiliation. Arinia felt her chest tighten, but she refused to cry. Tears would only feed their scorn. She turned her gaze across the hall, letting her eyes wander past the laughing nobles and sneering delegates. That was when she saw him. Standing among the lower representatives, where the lesser world sent their envoys, was a human. He was not dressed in jewels or armor, nor did he carry the proud arrogance of the others. His uniform was plain navy blue, trimmed with silver at the shoulders. Formal but simple. His posture was steady, his expression calm, and when her eyes met his, he did something no one else had done that night. He smiled. It was not the mocking smile of suitors who thought themselves superior, nor the false grin of politicians who spoke lies in silk tones. It was warm, genuine, almost kind. Arinia blinked, taken aback. Humans were newcomers to the council, barely known, often dismissed as insignificant. Their world was young compared to the ancient empires that ruled the stars. Many saw them as primitive, reckless, too bold for their fragile bodies. She herself had never spoken to one directly. And yet this man looked at her not as a prize, not as a failure, but as if she were simply a person. The herald's voice broke her thoughts. The final suitor, Lord Vanar of the Korath Dominion. A tall, broad alien with obsidian skin and glowing red eyes strode forward. His cloak was lined with blades, and his voice carried the weight of a conqueror. "Princess Arinia," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are beautiful, but beauty without power is dust. The Korath need strength, not softness. I refuse." Gasps spread through the chamber. To be refused openly by the Dominion was more than an insult. It was a declaration. The last suitor had rejected her, and with him, the ceremony was over. Silence fell. Arinia's heart sank, but she forced herself to stand tall. If no one chose her, then so be it. She would not beg. She would not break. But then, as the whispers of mockery began to rise around her, her gaze returned to the human. He still stood there, calm and unshaken, his eyes steady upon hers. Something stirred within her, a spark of rebellion, of defiance against the entire hall. For so long she had been told what she lacked. Tonight she was ready to decide what she wanted. Her voice rang clear across the chamber. "If none among you will choose me," she said, her words carrying strength that silenced the crowd, "then I will choose for myself." Every gaze turned toward her. The nobles leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Arinya lifted her chin and pointed across the hall. Her silver eyes locked with his. "You," she said firmly, "the human delegate, will you be my husband?" The chamber erupted. Some shouted in outrage. Others laughed, thinking it a jest. Her father's eyes widened with shock. The alien nobles hissed, screeched, or bellowed. A princess of the Valorian Empire asking a human? Impossible, insulting, unthinkable. But in the middle of the storm, the human remained still. Captain Elias Ward, representative of Earth, blinked once, surprised by the sudden weight of every gaze upon him. For a heartbeat, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. He looked at the princess, not at her crown, not at her lineage, not at the scandal she had just unleashed, but at her. The chamber of the Galactic Council had never heard silence like this before. The princess's words still hung in the air, echoing inside every corner of the vast hall. "Will you be my husband?" Gasps, murmurs, and then a storm of outrage followed. Alien nobles rose from their seats, wings flaring, scales rattling, eyes glowing with fury. The sound of 1,000 angry voices filled the chamber like the roar of a collapsing star. "This is an insult!" shrieked the Shirellan prince, his feathers bristling. "Unthinkable!" hissed the Nithari ambassador, his forked tongue flashing. "A human?" thundered Lord Vanar of the Korath Dominion. "She lowers the dignity of her people by even speaking such words." Yet through the storm, Arinya stood firm, her silver eyes unshaken. She did not waver, even as her father's face hardened like stone upon the Emperor's throne. She had been humiliated all evening, rejected by every so-called suitor. But this was her choice. And for the first time she felt free. The human delegate, Captain Elias Ward, was still frozen in shock. He had not expected to be pulled into this. He had only come to represent Earth quietly, to observe, to learn how the galaxy worked. And now, before the eyes of 1,000 alien powers, a princess had asked him to be her husband. Elias cleared his throat, feeling the weight of every gaze upon him. He was just a man from Earth, a soldier turned diplomat, standing among giants, who could crush his species with fleets of warships. And yet, as his eyes met Arinya's, he saw no mockery in her gaze, no trap, no trick, only resolve. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the hall. His voice, deep and commanding, silenced the chaos. "Daughter," he said, each syllable heavy with warning, "do you understand what you have done?" "I do," Arinya answered firmly, though her heart raced. "No one chose me, father. So I have chosen." The word sent another ripple through the crowd. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "A human? Of all creatures, you pick one whose species has no power, no standing, no history among us? Do you seek to shame me further?" Arinya's lips trembled, but she spoke with strength. "I seek only to be with someone who sees me as more than a pawn. Someone who does not measure worth only in conquest or cruelty." He looked at me with respect when no one else did. The hall exploded again with outrage, but Elias finally stepped forward. His voice was calm but steady. "With respect, Emperor Kalor, your daughter honors me with her words. But I must make something clear. On Earth, marriage is not about power. It is about choice, mutual choice. If she asks me, then I must also decide." The aliens scoffed. Some laughed openly. To them, humans were barely more than children in the cosmic order. The idea of a human daring to speak to an emperor in such a way was almost comical. But Arinya's heart quickened. He had not mocked her. He had not dismissed her. He was not eager to use her name for gain as the others would have. He spoke with honesty. The Emperor's eyes burned like fire. Then decide, human. Will you accept her hand and drag my empire into disgrace, or will you refuse and spare us this madness? Elias looked at Arinya. In her eyes he saw loneliness, yes, but also courage. He saw a woman who had been rejected because she refused to play the cruel games of power. He thought of Earth, so new to this galaxy, so often overlooked, underestimated. And he thought of what it would mean if he said yes. He took a slow breath. Princess Arinya, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. You honor me more than I can say. If you truly ask this not as strategy, but as your heart's choice, then I will not refuse. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some shouted in fury. Others laughed with disbelief. The avian nobles shrieked. The reptilians hissed. Lord Vanar slammed a clawed hand against the floor. The Emperor's hand clenched on the armrest of his throne. Silence, he roared, and the chamber obeyed. He turned his gaze upon Elias, cold and sharp. You are bold, human, but know this. If you take her hand, you will make enemies of empires far greater than your world has ever known. Elias did not flinch. With respect, Majesty, I already serve a people who have faced impossible odds. We do not back down, simply because others think us small. Somewhere in the crowd, a few delegates exchanged glances. For the first time, whispers shifted, not just of outrage, but of curiosity. Arinya's heart swelled. She had not been wrong about him. The Emperor's face darkened. Then so be it, he said at last. If this madness is to continue, there will be consequences. The council will not ignore this insult. He raised his hand, and the herald struck the great gong, signaling the end of the ceremony. Nobles began to leave, their voices rising in angry arguments. Some threatened war, others promised retribution. A few, quietly, seemed intrigued. When the hall had mostly emptied, Arinya stood with Elias at her side. For the first time that night, she allowed herself a small smile. You spoke bravely, she said softly. Elias gave a faint chuckle. Braver than I feel right now, trust me. Her smile grew warmer. Still, you did not run. That means more to me than you know. But even as she spoke, shadows moved among the departing nobles. Assassins whispered of orders. Enemies plotted. Already, choosing a human had set fire to the galaxy's pride, and the storm was only beginning. The morning after the choosing ceremony, the galaxy awoke to chaos. Word of Princess Arinya's choice spread faster than the speed of the Council's communication networks. Every star system seemed to know by sunrise. The Valorian princess had chosen a human. The news traveled across the glittering spires of the Galactic Council and into the homes of the oldest empires. Beings who had ruled star systems for millennia whispered in disbelief. Humans, a fragile young species from a small blue planet. To take a princess of the Valorians as a spouse was unthinkable. It was a challenge to the natural order, a blow to centuries of galactic hierarchy. Lord Vanar of the Korath Dominion summoned his advisors. This human must be stopped, he growled, his claws tapping against the obsidian table. The Valorians are powerful, yes, but foolish. And the girl, she has brought weakness into her empire. We cannot allow this insult to stand. Meanwhile, emissaries from the Nithari and Shirellans began sending fleets toward the Valorian borders. Not for war, at least not yet, but as a warning. Obedience had always been demanded by power, and no species had ever dared defy the Council's unwritten rules in this way. Back on Valoria, the palace was tense. Emperor Kaler's throne room was quiet except for the heavy tread of guards. Arinya and Elias walked side by side, their hands brushing lightly, a small comfort in the storm. You understand what's happening, don't you? Arinya asked, her voice steady, though her heart raced. Elias nodded. They will test me. They will threaten us. They will try to scare you into changing your mind. I have seen empires react this way before, but we can face them. Arinya's silver eyes softened. I believe that. But I need to know. Are you truly ready? If you say yes, there is no turning back. Not for you, not for me, not even for Earth. I am ready, he said simply, and if I fail, I will still stand beside you. It was that courage, that stubbornness, that began to turn whispers in the galaxy from mockery to curiosity. Humans were unpredictable. They were not machines of war nor pawns in politics. They were clever, adaptable, and willing to act when others hesitated. And this human, he had just shown bravery in front of an entire galaxy. The first challenges came swiftly. On the second day after the ceremony, an envoy from the Shirellans arrived, demanding Arinya retract her declaration. Their leader, a feathered diplomat named Kilthorn, addressed the princess in a voice full of threat. Princess Arinya, you dishonor your empire by aligning yourself with this primitive species. Withdraw your words and we may avoid conflict. Persist and you bring shame upon your people and invite war. Arinya's response was quiet but firm. I will not withdraw. I will not measure my life by the opinions of those who value power over honor. Captain Elias Ward stands with me by choice as I stand with him. That is enough. The envoy's face twisted in rage. This is madness. You cannot expect the galaxy to accept such folly. Then we will show them, Elias replied calmly. The next day, the Nithari launched a psychological campaign. Hollow messages and broadcasts filled every major system, depicting humans as weak, fragile, and unworthy. Yet, to the surprise of the Council, the response was not fear, but intrigue. Humans had a stubborn charm. They adapted quickly. They worked together when the galaxy expected chaos. In the Valorian palace, Elias began demonstrating this quietly. The palace had always been equipped for safety and defense, but human logic and ingenuity made it far more efficient. He found weaknesses in the palace's defense systems and proposed better strategies. He suggested ways for Valorian diplomats to communicate more clearly with other races, avoiding misinterpretation and political traps. The palace staff were shocked. Why does he think so simply? One guard whispered. It's basic, but it works. Yes, Arinya said with a small smile. Humans see things differently. They are not clouded by history or pride. They act with clarity, and that makes them dangerous in a good way. Outside, the galaxy began to notice. Traders in lesser systems who had ignored Earth now watched closely. Some whispered that perhaps humans were underestimated. Perhaps the princess had not been foolish after all, but not everyone was impressed. Lord Vaynar of the Korath Dominion was not pleased. He sent a fleet to Valoria's borders, not to attack directly but to intimidate. Massive ships, bristling with weapons, formed a ring of shadow around the planet. The message was clear. Humanity is to be tested. Elias did not panic. He studied the fleet from the observation deck, scanning every vessel's layout, every possible weakness. They assume we are soft, he said. They do not understand humans. Arinya watched him, admiration growing. And yet we are outnumbered. Outnumbered? Yes, he said with a small grin, but not outsmarted. For weeks, tense negotiations unfolded. Arinya and Elias met with alien leaders one by one. Some came with threats, others with persuasion. Yet in each meeting, the human captain's calm, honest words shone. He spoke with courage that few aliens could match. He refused to bow, but he also refused to insult. He treated everyone with respect, even those who openly hated him. The galaxy began to take notice. Rumors spread. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps their strength lay not in sheer force, but in adaptability, intelligence, and courage. In private, Emperor Kalor observed his daughter and her human companion. At first, he had been furious, certain that their actions would bring disaster. But as he watched Elias negotiate, defend the palace, and earn respect through deeds rather than titles, he felt something he had not expected. Admiration. The Korath fleet eventually pulled back, unwilling to risk open conflict, though they left a clear warning. The Shirellans, frustrated at their inability to intimidate, began to see the human captain as a symbol, a spark that might ignite change. Arinya felt a quiet satisfaction. She had chosen someone not for power, not for politics, but for the heart, and the galaxy was already learning that humans could not be ignored, but shadows still loomed. Lord Vanar plotted secretly. Hidden agents moved across systems seeking weaknesses in Valorian defenses. Rumors of assassination attempts and sabotage whispered through the stars, and yet, through it all, Elias remained calm, ready, and resolute. 1. Night under the twin moons of Valoria. Arinya and Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The air shimmered with faint energy from the planet's unique atmosphere, and the stars stretched across the sky like silver threads. "You've done more than survive the galaxy's outrage," Arinya said softly. "You've made them respect you. You've made them question everything they thought about humans." Elias smiled, looking out over the gardens. "I do what I can. But it's your courage that inspires them more than anything I've done. You chose me in front of the galaxy. That act, it will be remembered." Arinya's silver eyes shone. "And we will need that courage. The storm is far from over." He nodded. "I know, but we face it together. Whatever they send, whatever they plot, we stand united. That is our strength." The first whispers of hope began to spread among other young species in the galaxy. If humans could stand beside a Valorian princess, and if that princess could defy centuries of tradition, perhaps there was more to the galaxy than old empires and rigid rules. And in that moment, Arinya understood something deep within her heart. The choice she had made was not just about love. It was about proving that the strength of the heart, the courage to act, and the loyalty to stand beside another, even a species thought weak, could challenge empires. Somewhere in the council, old leaders watched and feared. Others, quietly, began to take note. And humans, for the first time in galactic history, were not just seen. They were being measured, tested, and considered as equals. The storm of opposition raged on, but the first victories had already been won. Not with weapons, not with fleets, but with courage, intelligence, and unity. The Valorian palace had never felt so tense. Weeks of political unrest had left the once grand halls humming with anxiety. Guards patrolled every corridor, advisors whispered in corners, and diplomats from other systems kept careful, suspicious watch. But in the center of it all, Princess Arinya and Captain Elias Ward stood together, ready for what the galaxy had decided to throw at them. The council had responded to the bold act of the princess not with war, at least not yet, but with a trial. A test to prove that Elias, a human, was worthy of standing beside a Valorian princess. The terms were simple in wording but terrifying in implication. Survive challenges designed to break body, mind, and spirit. Fail, and the alliance would crumble. Arinya had been given no choice in the trial. It was for Elias alone. But she refused to be a bystander. "If he faces this, then I face it with him," she said firmly to her father, who had initially tried to forbid it. The first challenge came from the Korath Dominion, whose influence was far-reaching. Elias was taken to a simulation chamber, a vast complex filled with holographic enemies, environmental hazards, and complex tactical puzzles. The goal was not just to survive, but to demonstrate intelligence, courage, and adaptability. He stepped inside, his pulse steady despite the knowledge that failure could cost not only his life, but the fragile hope for the princess's choice. The chamber shifted, and suddenly he found himself in the middle of a war-torn cityscape, alien drones swarming from every direction. Elias quickly analyzed the environment. Broken structures, energy shields, and hidden passages became tools, not obstacles. He moved with careful precision, avoiding the drones' laser strikes while using their own weapons against them. It was not brute strength that carried him forward. It was human ingenuity. Every step, every decision, showcased adaptability that few aliens could understand. Meanwhile, Arinya watched from a distant observation platform. Her heart pounded as she observed his movements. She had seen humans fight before, in training simulations, but this was more than training. He was thinking 3 steps ahead, improvising in ways that no Valorian soldier would consider. Her respect deepened, and with it, her love. When the chamber's first stage ended, Elias emerged, breathing but unbroken. The council emissaries murmured among themselves. Some shook their heads, unable to understand how a human could succeed where many elite alien warriors had failed. Others quietly began to take note. The next challenge tested his mind. The Nithari ambassador had prepared a labyrinth of puzzles, each requiring knowledge of multiple galactic languages, historical codes, and abstract logic. Failure would be public and humiliating. Elias worked tirelessly, scribbling notes, memorizing sequences, translating symbols. Hours passed and the chamber echoed with silence, broken only by his quiet mutterings as he solved one puzzle after another. When he finally reached the end, the emissaries' faces betrayed their shock. They had assumed humans were simple, predictable. They had been wrong. Arinya's eyes glimmered with pride. "He is not just surviving," she whispered. "He is showing them what humans can do." But the trials were far from over. The final stage was set on a planet known for its extreme conditions, a barren, storm-lashed world where only the strongest could survive. Elias was dropped into the middle of a raging sandstorm, with minimal supplies and enemies lurking in every shadow. Even seasoned Valorian soldiers would struggle, yet Elias moved forward. He used the wind to mask his movements, found shelter in the natural formations, and fashioned tools from the limited resources available. Every obstacle the planet threw at him became a test of resilience. Arinya followed from the observation deck, her silver eyes scanning every movement. She could not stand beside him physically, but her heart was with him every step of the way. She remembered her own training, the expectations placed on her, the constant scrutiny of the council, and realized that in Elias, she saw a reflection of what courage truly meant. The storm raged for days. Night and day blurred as Elias fought hunger, exhaustion, and relentless attacks from hidden opponents. Yet he never faltered. Each challenge pushed him closer to his limits, but he adapted, learning quickly, thinking creatively, and refusing to surrender. When he finally emerged, battered and bloodied but alive, the council representatives were stunned. Elias had done what no human, or many aliens, had ever accomplished. His courage, intelligence, and loyalty had turned a trial meant to humiliate into a demonstration of remarkable strength. Arinya rushed to him, ignoring protocol. She embraced him, her relief and pride pouring into the small gesture. "You did it," she said softly. "You survived what they thought would break you." Elias smiled weakly, leaning against her. "I didn't do it for them," he said. "I did it for us. For you." The council could not ignore the results. Even Lord Vanar, the Korath Dominion's representative, had to acknowledge Elias's achievement. "The human survives," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Impossible. And yet..." The trials changed more than just Elias's standing. They shifted the perception of humans across the galaxy. A species once dismissed as weak, fragile, and insignificant now demonstrated qualities that even the most powerful empires could not ignore. Humans had ingenuity, resilience, courage, and loyalty. They had the ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight against odds that would crush others. Back on Valoria, Arinya and Elias walked through the palace gardens, sunlight glinting off crystalline fountains. "You've done more than prove yourself," she said. "You've changed how they see humanity. You've changed the galaxy." Elias looked at her, exhaustion evident but a quiet pride shining in his eyes. "We've done it together. Your choice, your courage. It gave me the strength to face everything." Arinya took his hand, a gesture simple yet full of meaning. "Then we face the next storm together, no matter what comes." And the galaxy, watching from afar, began to whisper. A human had survived trials no one thought possible. A princess had chosen him not for power, but for trust and loyalty. And together, they had shown that the smallest, youngest species might hold strength that no empire had ever expected. Yet not all were pleased. Lord Vanar retreated to his fleet, plotting vengeance in silence. The Shirellans and Nithari conspired behind closed doors. Danger still lurked, but for the first time, Arinya and Elias stood unshaken. Their bond forged in trials of fire and loyalty. The trials had not just tested Elias, they had tested the galaxy's assumptions, and humanity had passed. For the first time, a quiet truth began to spread among the stars. Humans were not to be dismissed. Humans were capable of courage, brilliance, and loyalty that could challenge the most powerful empires. And together, the princess and the human would show the galaxy that true strength was not only in fleets, weapons, or politics. It was in courage, unity, and the choice to stand together. The trials were over, but the war for recognition, for acceptance, and for the right to stand together had only begun. And both Arinya and Elias knew one thing clearly. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side, unbroken and united. The galaxy had watched the trials, the challenges, and the defiance of Princess Arinya and Captain Elias Ward. Rumors spread from the outermost colonies to the inner worlds of ancient empires. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not naive. They were adaptable, courageous, and loyal beyond expectation. Yet not all accepted this truth willingly. Lord Vanar of the Korath Dominion gathered his fleet in secret, preparing a blockade around Valoria. The Shirellans and Nithari sent emissaries to influence other systems, warning that the human captain was dangerous, that he might manipulate the princess, and that this union could destabilize the balance of power in the galaxy. Inside Valoria's palace, Arinya and Elias prepared for the next stage of their journey. They were no longer simply a princess and her chosen human. They had become symbols. Symbols of courage, defiance, and a new kind of unity. Arinya paced the observation deck, her silver eyes scanning the stars. They will try to stop us. They will try to scare the humans, the allies, even us, but we cannot back down now. Not after everything. Elias rested a hand on hers. We do not face this alone. Many systems are quietly watching, waiting to see who stands strong. Our example will inspire them. Fear may drive some away, but courage will attract more than we know. Their first challenge came swiftly. A coalition of alien fleets, led by the Korath Dominion, appeared in Valorian space. Their massive warships blocked trade routes and their weapons hummed with destructive energy. They demanded that the princess retract her declaration and annul the engagement immediately. Arinya faced the council representatives and fleet commanders without fear. We will not retract, she said clearly. Captain Elias Ward stands beside me. He has proven his courage, intelligence, and loyalty. You may test him again if you wish, but our choice will not change. The council representatives were stunned. Never before had a princess of the Valorians stood so boldly before the galaxy's oldest and most powerful empires. Murmurs of admiration mixed with outrage. Elias stepped forward. If you wish to challenge us, then so be it, he said calmly. But know this. We do not fight with arrogance. We fight with ingenuity, strategy, and the willingness to protect what we value. You may have fleets, but we have courage. The standoff lasted for days. The Korath Dominion and its allies tested Valoria's defenses, sending probes and scouting parties to provoke responses. Yet every time, humans and Valorians worked together, outsmarting their opponents rather than facing them in direct combat. Elias's strategies leveraged human adaptability, unexpected tactics, and the natural ingenuity that had carried him through the trials. Word of their success spread. Independent systems began to side quietly with Valoria. Merchants, minor empires, and even some council members who had been skeptical now saw humanity as a force to respect. It was not brute power that impressed them, but resilience, cleverness, and the bond between Arinya and Elias, a bond forged in courage and trust, not politics or ambition. Then came the pivotal moment. Lord Vanar ordered a direct assault, expecting an easy victory against what he still assumed was a fragile human-led alliance. But what he encountered shocked him. Valoria's fleet, strengthened by human strategy and reinforced by newfound allies, met the assault with precision. Ships moved in formations no alien fleet had anticipated, using terrain, speed, and misdirection to neutralize superior firepower. Elias coordinated from the command bridge, his mind analyzing every variable, predicting every move, and adapting instantly to unexpected threats. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced, but he was effective. He demonstrated the core of humanity's strength: adaptability, creativity, and courage. The battle raged for hours. At one point, a massive Korath dreadnought aimed to ram the Valorian command ship. Sensors failed, weapons misfired, and it seemed disaster was imminent. But Elias noticed a flaw in its approach pattern and instructed the Valorian pilots to exploit it. With precise timing, they disabled the dreadnought's engines, forcing it to retreat. The council watched in disbelief. A human had outmaneuvered some of the galaxy's most experienced commanders. The whispers that had begun months earlier now became roars. Humanity could not be underestimated. When the fighting ended, the Korath fleet withdrew. Lord Vanar seethed but recognized the truth. The princess had chosen wisely, and the human captain had proven that bravery and intelligence could rival even the most advanced civilizations. Back on Valoria, the celebrations were quiet but profound. Allies who had remained neutral now sent congratulations. Systems long ignored by the major empires began reaching out, offering trade, alliances, and support. The galaxy had begun to change, not because of conquest, but because of courage, unity, and the refusal to submit to old hierarchies. Arinya and Elias stood on the balcony of the palace once more. The twin moons shone above, casting silver light over the gardens where crystalline fountains sparkled like stars. "You've done more than survive," Arinya said softly. "You've changed the galaxy." Elias shook his head. "We did it, together. Your courage made it possible. I only followed." She smiled. "Then let's follow together, always, no matter what comes next." He took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Always. And in that moment, the galaxy witnessed a new truth. The Valorian princess and her human companion were not only symbols of courage, they were a declaration that strength was not measured in fleets, wealth, or centuries of rule. True power was measured in heart, loyalty, and the courage to choose what is right over what is expected. Months later, the engagement was formalized. The ceremony was not extravagant, not designed to impress the council or alien spectators, but simple, heartfelt, and full of meaning. Aliens from across systems came not to mock but to witness history. Humans were present, some traveling from Earth to see a world that had once seemed distant and unimportant. When Arinya and Elias exchanged vows, it was more than a marriage. It was a message to the galaxy, to every species that had doubted them, to every empire that had sought to intimidate. The era of underestimating humanity was over, and indeed, humans began to rise in influence. Traders, explorers, and diplomats from Earth found themselves welcomed in systems that had once ignored them. They were no longer a curiosity. They were participants in the galaxy's unfolding story. Arinya and Elias, now partners in both life and leadership, looked toward the stars together. Challenges would come. Enemies would not disappear, and old empires would still resist change. But for the first time, they faced the future not with fear but with hope and determination. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. Sometimes, the smallest, youngest species could reshape the cosmos. And the princess who chose a human, and the human who stood beside her with courage and loyalty, became legends that would inspire generations. The Valorian Empire had found new strength, humanity had found respect, and the stars themselves seemed brighter for the change. A new dawn had arrived, not through war, domination, or conquest, but through courage, trust, and the power of choosing what is right. The story of Princess Arinya and Captain Elias Ward would be told for centuries. The tale of a princess who refused to accept rejection, a human who proved his worth, and a galaxy that could no longer dismiss humanity. Together they had shown that true power lies not in fear or dominance, but in courage, loyalty, and unity.